the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Heather Avis is a wife. She's a mom of Mason, Truly, and August. Macy and August have Down syndrome, and she and her husband and family live in South Carolina with their children and with their 2 golden doodles. Heather's also a New York Times bestselling author, an award-winning podcaster, a public speaker, and an advocate for persons with Down syndrome. And she's also the founder of The Lucky Few. So good morning, Heather.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm really glad to be talking with you and talking to you here from, looks like maybe even California, but are you in California or South Carolina this morning?
I'm in Southern California.
Beautiful, beautiful. Good place to be. So you heard that clip. I don't know if you have a comment on that, but you also have a book entitled The Lucky Few and a foundation entitled The Lucky Few. So why The Lucky Few?
Yeah, I did hear that clip and I just thought, yes and amen. Those are my comments. I have a lot more comments on it, but I'll stick with, that was a great clip, and yes and amen.
Here.
When my kids first came home to me, they came to me through adoption, and my oldest daughter, Macy, has Down syndrome. And we weren't set off, my husband and I, we didn't intend to adopt a child with a disability. It's a very long story. I wrote the whole book called The Lucky Few, but basically God continued to put us down this path. It was one foot in front of the other, and it led us to our daughter, Macy, who we found out had Down syndrome. And her birth family had made an adoption plan solely based on the fact that she had Down syndrome. If she hadn't had Down syndrome, they would have parented her. And when we learned about her, we were pretty terrified, a little bit sad, and maybe even I would use the word devastated that this was the path that God was leading us towards, but we couldn't say no. So there was the devastation and the sadness came from this narrative around us, from people not connected to the Down syndrome community, saying to us, like, Down syndrome equals bad. Like, this is to be avoided. We're so sorry. Why would you bring home a baby with Down syndrome if you don't have to? These were the narratives that people were saying to us, but also society had created around a Down syndrome diagnosis. And then we, again, long story short, we say yes. I call her my scariest and best yes. And we bring her home. And I remember that first night really, really vividly. She was 3 months old, and I was just holding her in my arms. I mean, it gives me chills when I tell it every time, looking down at her little face. And I just remember saying out loud, I don't know what I was so afraid of, because in my hands was a baby, right? Like at the end of the day,
that encounter changed everything.
Yeah, she's just a full human package in my arms. And as she got older and I'd find myself as the only person with a baby with Down syndrome at the grocery store, she started toddling around, and we're at the park and there's no other kids with Down syndrome at the park. And I remember one time, again, very vividly, being at the park with her. She's the only kid with Down syndrome, and she did a physical activity that she hadn't done before. And I was like freaking out in my heart and gave a little yelp, like, oh my gosh, Maisie, you did it. And it wasn't a big deal for a child without a disability to do this activity, but for her it was. And I remember thinking, like, hang on a second here. I just witnessed something pretty miraculous, and I feel so unbelievably lucky that I'm the only one here with this kid with Down syndrome. Like, she's mine. I get her. And I was overwhelmed with, we could call it, I feel very blessed, but this feeling of like, I am so lucky to know and love and learn alongside this child with Down syndrome. Very few of us have that. And that's where The Lucky Few was born. This idea that people had decided on my daughter with Down syndrome and I have a son with Down syndrome, that there was something wrong. But what I like to think about is when God created my daughter Macy and my son August with Down syndrome, that my kids, every single cell in their body has an extra chromosome. That's what is Down syndrome, is an extra copy of the 21st chromosome. There's 3 copies. And every single cell has an extra chromosome. And it makes me think about this big, good God who perfectly fine-tuned my kids to have an extra cell, an extra chromosome in every cell of their body, that it wasn't a mistake, that it wasn't something we're going to pray away, that I believe that when God was creating them, it was with pleasure, that every chromosome he added to every cell was for his goodness and to be a reflection of who he is. And so I love this idea of like this fine-tuning of creation and how I believe my kids fit into that.
Yeah, and you're sharing that joy. We don't have Down syndrome children ourselves, but the joy they bring into others' families' lives, and that
Yeah.
I'm smiling here because I'm listening to you. I'm one of the speaking of the lucky few. I'm one of the lucky three. So Sarah and I are on the air, and then Gabby's the third member of our team, and you actually know Gabby, Heather, because you've been corresponding with her into today.
hmm
She's a mom as well, and I think we have her on the line. So, Gabby, if you are on the line, welcome to the. Yeah, looks like we do. So, welcome to the conversation, and great to have you here.
Thanks, Mark and Heather. It's just listening to you and some of the details you have shared. I just see myself so much in the experience that you had with your children. And I have our third child, Joey. He has cerebral palsy and he's deaf. So not related with the Down syndrome, but yes, with the having a disability and special needs. And I just it took me a while for that to sink in, that I was a mom of a child with disability and or a child with special needs. I remember back then I was like just going to the next appointment, the next doctor's appointment, the next therapy, just trying to find something that will help my child. But it took some grace of God to make me realize, like, hey, there's nothing here to fix, right? Like he is an amazing child. That's how God created him. And this is how it's supposed to be. Let me love him. And then I became a better advocate for him, looking for his needs. And I was wondering, like, if it was something similar to you, or what happened in that moment when after your children were home with you, that you realized, like, hey, I'm a mother, I'm a parent of a special needs child. And, like, what was your reaction after that?
Thanks for sharing all that. And it's good to talk to you in person and not just on email. I don't think any parent bringing home a child with a disability, whether you have them, like whether they're born to you, you adopt them, or there's an accident, right? And something changes forever in your child. I don't think any parent is ever prepared for being the parent of a child with a disability. I think it's a gig that you can only understand if you're in it, and therefore it can kind of feel isolating and lonely until you find your people who can look at you and go, I get it, I get you, because it is a different journey than parenting a child without a disability. And I remember a moment when Macy was about 5 years old, and we had spent a lot of time in a lot of therapies, right? You probably can relate to this if anyone listening who has a child with disability. Especially when they're little, we're doing physical therapy and occupational therapy, start speech therapy, we're doing early start education. And the whole point of that initially for me was to make her, I didn't know how to put words around this, but I can look back and go, we did all these things so that she could be, quote, better. But what does better mean? And I had this moment where a mom said, the reason we work so hard like this is so our kids with Down syndrome can be more like kids without Down syndrome. And it was like my Oprah aha moment, like, wait a second, that's not what I want. Like, my daughter is who she is, and I want her to be who she is, and who she is a person with Down syndrome. I want her to be her best self, but I want her to be fully her. And for me, and as her mom, it was like, okay, I'm raising a child with a disability that I'm going to embrace and celebrate, not try to fix and change. And I think there's this fine line between helping our child with a disability be their best selves in a world that's not made for them, and not apologizing for who they are, not trying to change or, quote, fix who they are, because who they are, I believe, is a reflection of the divine. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there was an absolute moment for me when Macy was 5 that the ways in which I pursued therapies and the ways in which I viewed being a parent to a child with a disability and my child with disability just shifted completely.
It kind of like empowers us, in a way, like realizing, coming to that aha moment that you mentioned, and just make us be more, understanding of who they are, and be more proactive on their care as well. And I have one other question for you, because we know we have other kids as well, and
Yeah.
sometimes with all the therapies and doctor's appointments, of course, it's more time. He's more demanding of our time. How do you balance the timing with the rest of the with the other sibling, so they can feel, involved and not only and they don't feel left out, just for the natural way of them being special needs?
Yeah, definitely. I think any parent who's asking that question is probably doing a really good job already and doesn't realize it. Our middle daughter is the only one without a disability. She's sandwiched between two kids with Down syndrome, and I'll get asked a variation of this question a lot. And her reality is this is all she knows. She doesn't know a life in which she doesn't have a sibling with a disability, and so this is her normal, right? This is her life. This is her normal. But with that said, I think it just takes a little intentionality, like it does with all our kids. It's open conversations, like letting her feel how she wants to feel, letting her say things she needs to say, not shaming her for having moments of like, this feels unfair, or I wish it was different, just like joining her in that conversation. And then finding the things that she loves to do and a pocket of time to sit with her. I think even if it's like, I can only do 10 minutes today to listen to theater music with you because that's her passion, but taking that 10 minutes and making sure to like focus on her is something to do. Yeah. And I think, like I said, for a parent, if you're asking that question, chances are you're already being intentional about making sure that all your kids feel seen and loved. And our kids without disabilities being raised alongside their kids with their siblings with disability, again, this is their life. This is their reality. I think they're probably doing better than we realize even as their parents.
Let's move over to this kind of fascinating thing. You write books. You write children's books. I'll read you these titles that are familiar to you. I Like You So Much, Different, A Great Thing to Be, Everyone Belongs, The Lucky Few, this one I particularly like, Scoot Over and Make Some Room, Creating a Space Where Everyone Belongs. So, why do you write these books? And then more to the heart question is, it seems like you're trying to talk to the kids more than you're talking to all of us. So what about that?
Sure. Yeah. So The Lucky Few and Scoot Over Make Some Room are for adults. They're not children's picture books, but the other three are children's picture books. And I shifted that. The Lucky Few and Scoot Over Make Some Room I wrote first, and then I shifted to children's books because, I mean, it's like the cliche, but the children are our future. They're our hope of the world. And the thing that is so beautiful, right? All parents know this, and educators, anyone working with kids are just so open and honest and sponges. They just want to learn, and they want to understand the world around them, and they want to see themselves in the world around them. And having kids with disabilities and walking into a bookstore, and I mean, it's gotten so much better, but like this, when Macy was born, 18 years ago, in Barnes & Noble, there wasn't a book on the shelves that she could see herself in. And if she can't see herself in the stories around her, how can she know that she even belongs in a story or in the world that's happening around her? And so I wanted to write books that celebrated my kids. I mean, they're my why. But I wanted to write books that celebrated all kids, that kids, disabilities or not, that they could see who they are as they are is good, and they are enough, and they actually don't have to do or be or achieve anything more than waking up in the morning and existing as the person God created them to be. That's it. Period. Full stop. You are good. You are enough. And so I just want to write books that kids could see themselves in. And then there's a little tricky thing as a children's book author, because oftentimes we understand that adults are reading the books to the kids. So it's like a sneaky way to get the message into adults too.
Yes. It's a great. And these three children's books, are they the same but different? Meaning, is it you're communicating the same theme through a different story, or do you find yourself through life circumstance, inspiration, and so forth, saying, "Oh, wow, I didn't know I was going to be writing this book," and they're not mutually exclusive. It could be both, but I'm just curious about the kind of the evolution of these books.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of both. It's a little bit of both. They are under the same umbrella. I think all the work that I do in my messaging is under this umbrella of belonging. It's a lesson that I've had to learn myself, that I'm continuing to learn, and this idea that like our value and our worth is tied to the fact that we have breath in our lungs, that we can love and be loved, that we have a heartbeat in our chest, period, full stop. Like there's nothing more that needs to happen for us to be fully human and fully embraced and fully loved. And so, but we live in a world that gives us such the opposite message. At least that's how I find it. It's like, do more, you're made for more, be better. Even the books that our kids read often are like books about overcoming and books about achievement. And I'm like, you can do it. And those are good messages too in kids' books. But my theme is this theme of belonging, this theme of like just take a deep breath and know that who you are as you are, you get to be here. Like you belong here in this world, in this family, in this school, in this community, in this dance class. So that's the overall theme. But each of my books you could read in any order and they stand alone. They're not connected in that way.
Well, like in this point you're making, I think your books, not that I'm an authority, but I can have my opinion here. I think they're more important for the reason you said, because we do live in this, what I'll call toxic culture of achievement. And I suffer from those toxicities myself. So I'm grateful for your work. I want to take us over and come join the conversation with Heather Avis, 888-914-9149, 888-914-9149. I know you have your own stories of belonging, either in your own light as a child, because we're all children, or in your experience as a parent. But I want to take us over to the topic of belonging kind of on an extended family basis, if you will, because I'm sure you've had some encounters with families and you mentioned this earlier, being drawn into other families, but this matter of kind of living beyond the nuclear family, if you will. And I'll tell a short little anecdote here to take us there. I learned over the weekend that there's this 100-year-old woman. I don't know why she has this nickname, but her nickname is Gangster Granny, and she was in the England Argentina match last week, holding up a sign saying Messi is my hero, and I've lived through every World Cup. The World Cup started in 1930, and she's 100.
Wow.
And and at the end of and this was pointed out to Messi. So at the end of the game, he actually gave his number 10 jersey to this 100-year-old woman. And so I just found that interesting. She's like, who is this person? So I dug around a little bit on her. Her name is Pauline Kana. She's from Ohio. She's a native there, but turns out she and her grandson have a social media following. And back in May, she won the award for being the oldest person to ever crowd surf. She was at a country music concert in Texas.
Oh my gosh.
And she crowd surfed. And this is the quote from somewhere in that kind of country music kind of write-up. She said, "It is very surreal, but I feel happy knowing that this time I've spent with my grandson creating silly videos has inspired and encouraged people to be kind, to laugh, and to connect with their elders." So I think about your work of belonging and, tying into kind of the gangster granny here. So A, thank you. And B, talk to us a little bit about this matter of kind of connecting other families through your work, writing these children's books and having a conversation like the one you and I are having now.
Yeah, I mean, you're on this journey too, like just being a parent, and then when you raise a child with a disability. And I think at the core of who we all are as humans, we want to be known, we want to be seen, we want to belong, right? Like we don't want to feel isolated in who we are. And once you strip away all the details about a person, which are also important, but once you strip all those away, there's like this ability to connect. And I think that my kids with Down syndrome, they're so uninhibited in who they are, that there's a real freedom there. And it's opened up doors for us to like be able to see other people for who they are once you kind of push away all the noise and you're like, oh, you're a person, I'm a person. And let's start there, And so like even my book, Different, A Great Thing to Be, it really encourages kids to see differences, see them and celebrate them and embrace them, not be like, well, we're actually all the same, because we have this core need, right, that makes us all the same. But then all those other differences are what make us unique and beautiful. And we get to learn from each other and grow and be our best selves when we embrace what's different in us and we embrace what's different in other people. And I think once we're able to like push away all the noise, see that core, the like core humanity in each other, and then it's like, and see that and connect that way, and then be like, and you're so different than me, and that makes me so excited to get to know you more. And then and I'm so different from you, and hopefully you have something to learn from me, and then we get to be fully ourselves, and be able to embrace who we are fully by embracing who others are fully. If that all makes sense. I know that sounds rambly.
It does make sense. And you remind me, I was reading Paul yesterday, and you're familiar with that description of the body. The church is the body of Christ, and historically I've associated with kind of the integrity that the body has and each part supporting each other, and that's true, period, full stop. But what struck me yesterday is before he says that, he just says, like, if a nose says that it wants to be a toe, or that it is a toe, it doesn't change the fact that it's a nose.
Sure.
So embracing the fact that I am Mark, embracing the fact that you are Heather, that your daughter Macy is Macy, like embracing who you are, rather than trying to be that other person, is the liberating thing, not only for you, but for the body. So it makes a ton of sense, Heather.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I don't know about you, I mean, we touched on this a little bit, but we are just inundated with this comparison and this hustle. And if only I were more like, if only I adjusted this, if only I did what this person's doing, then maybe I would, I don't know, make it, be better, feel better about myself. When I think what we're all longing for is someone to look at us and say, exactly who you are is amazing. Like, you just be you, because that's what we need in this world. We don't need you to be somebody else. I think we all desire that. I think our kids do. I know I do at 44 years old. I just want someone to look at me and say, oh, exactly who you are is what we want in this world.
Well, and this has come up. We began this show on June 8th, and of course, we're bringing Christ to the world through the media. And this has come up over and over and over again in our conversations here. Men and women, young and old, have talked about placing themselves in front of the Blessed Sacrament, in front of Jesus Christ in the Blessed Sacrament, and the inexplicable but real serenity they've experienced there, because it's in that encounter where people are being reminded of who they are, that they are beloved just as they are. So I'm grateful for you reminding of us of that. So Heather, with the little bit of time we have here, I'll ask you about adoption. I'm an adoptive father. Many of our listeners are adoptive parents. You're, of course, an adoptive parent of 3. What would you say to the person who's listening, who is a young mom, a young dad? Maybe they're struggling with infertility, or maybe they just want to adopt, but they're afraid that they won't love the child the way they would a biological child. What would you want that person to hear?
So it's interesting. Before I adopted, I would have a different answer, but having been through it and being a part of the adoption community, I think it's really, really important to, speaking of stories being told, to be immersing yourself in the story of adoption through following people and asking their stories of adopted, through listening to adult adoptees who have been adopted and are on that journey, to reading books about adoption. There's so much available to us now. I think being as educated as you possibly can be on adoption is really, really important, because it's a very, in my opinion, it's a really big decision to make. And I used to think like everyone should adopt, but I just don't think it's for everybody. I think it's an honor, but there has to be an understanding of the decision that you're making if you're going to adopt. And you can't step into it like, this will be so fun, rainbows and butterflies, because we're talking about a story that starts with the tragedy of a broken, severed relationship. and there's repercussions to that. So having that base understanding and then being able to grow from there. And if it is on your heart and this is something that you want to do, and you're willing to step into the story and have a better understanding of it, then I think it's there's a lot of kids who are looking for a mom and a dad.
That was the Best of the Week on Relevant Radio. The best way to listen to the Best of the Week is on the Relevant Radio app, free and always free. Download and share the #1 free Catholic app today in the App Store.